My parents demanded I drop out of college to save their failing bakery, while funding my brother's big plans, so I walked away. Then they called, begging me to come back. Here's what I told them. Hey, Reddit. My parents wanted me to throw away my future to save the family bakery, while my golden child brother got funded for his fantasies. I refused, got cut off, and went scorched earth. What followed was absolute chaos. I'm Kyle, 20 male, second year of college, and I just torched every bridge with my family over a bakery that's been bleeding money for years. Before you ask if I'm the bad guy here, let me lay out exactly how this went down. I grew up in one of those small towns where everyone knows everyone's business and nothing ever changes. Population maybe 8,000 on a good day. One main street, two traffic lights, and a Walmart that's considered the height of modern convenience. My family runs this bakery that's been around since my grandparents opened it decades ago. The kind of place with yellowing photos on the walls and recipes that haven't been updated since 1987. My parents took over after my grandparents retired, and from day one, they treated that bakery like it was some sacred family heirloom instead of what it actually was. A struggling business in a dying town where nobody wants to pay $4 for a croissant when they can get a dozen donuts at the grocery store for $6. The place was stuck in time. Same display cases my grandparents installed in the 80s. Same cash register that made this grinding sound every time you opened the drawer. Same worn linoleum floors that had been mopped 10,000 times but never quite came clean anymore. The walls were covered in photos of the bakery's glory days. Grand opening shots from 1965, newspaper clippings about best bakery in the county, pictures of my grandparents shaking hands with the mayor. Those glory days were long gone. Now the bakery was competing with chain stores, online ordering, and a generation of people who'd rather grab breakfast at a drive-thru than wait in line at a mom-and-pop shop with limited hours and higher prices. But try telling my parents that. According to them, the bakery was the heart of our family and our legacy. My dad would get this look in his eyes when he talked about it, like he was describing a cathedral instead of a storefront with a leaky roof and equipment from the Clinton administration. My mom would tear up talking about how her in-laws had built this business from nothing, how it represented decades of hard work and sacrifice. The reality was less romantic. The bakery made just enough money to keep the lights on and pay my parents a salary that would have been considered poverty level if they actually calculated it by the hour. They worked 60, 70 hours a week for what probably averaged out to less than minimum wage once you did the math. I watched them struggle my entire childhood. Equipment would break down, and they'd patch it together with duct tape and prayers because they couldn't afford replacements. Suppliers would jack up prices, and my parents would just absorb the cost instead of raising their own prices and risk losing customers. The roof leaked for 3 years before they finally scraped together enough to get it fixed. They'd be up at 4 a.m. to start baking, wouldn't get home until 8 p.m. after closing and cleaning. Every holiday, every weekend, every birthday, the bakery came first. I can't remember a single family vacation growing up. Can't remember my parents attending more than a handful of my school events, because someone had to mind the shop. As a kid, I got dragged into helping out constantly. Started when I was maybe 8 years old, sweeping floors after school while my parents worked. By 10, I was refilling the pastry case and learning to work the register. 12, I was taking orders and bagging up purchases while trying to do homework in the back room during slow periods. My parents framed it like I was learning the family business and building character. Really, I was just free labor they could guilt into working without pay. Every weekend, every school break, every summer, I was expected to be at that bakery helping out. While other kids were playing sports or hanging out with friends, I was packaging cookies and mopping floors. My dad would always drop these not-so-subtle hints about succession planning. One day, one of you boys will take over this place and keep the tradition alive, he'd say, looking between me and Brett like he was a king deciding which prince would inherit his kingdom. Except the kingdom was a struggling bakery in a dying town, and the throne was a life sentence of 4 a.m. wake-up calls and razor-thin profit margins. The thing is, I never wanted that life. I watched my parents work themselves into the ground for a business that barely broke even. Early mornings, late nights, holidays, weekends, the bakery consumed everything. They had no hobbies, no friends outside of customers, no life beyond flour and sugar. Their marriage had deteriorated into a business partnership where they only talked about supply orders, customer complaints, and equipment problems. I'd see my dad's hands permanently stained and cracked from years of handling dough and cleaning chemicals. My mom had developed arthritis in her shoulders from the repetitive motions of rolling and kneading. They were both exhausted all the time, stressed constantly about money, and completely consumed by a business that demanded everything and gave back barely enough to survive. That wasn't going to be me. I decided that around age 14, watching my dad have a breakdown because the oven broke right before a major holiday order rush and they didn't have money to fix it. He just stood there in the kitchen, face in his hands, while my mom called repair shops trying to find someone who'd come out immediately and accept payment in installments. I made a promise to myself that night. I was getting out. College, career, anything that didn't involve spending my life trapped in that bakery watching the same slow decline my parents were living through. Then there's my brother Brett. He's 18 now, but he's been the family golden child since he could walk. You know the type, could do absolutely nothing wrong in my parents' eyes. Brett could sleep until noon, contribute nothing to the household, and my parents would find a way to praise his independent spirit or his creative personality. Meanwhile, I was expected to handle everything like an adult from age 12 onwards. The double standards were insane, and they started early. Elementary school. I had to walk myself home every day, let myself in, do my homework without supervision, and start dinner prep before my parents got back from the bakery. Brett? My mom would rearrange the bakery schedule to pick him up personally, because he didn't like walking home alone. He was 1 year younger than me. 1 year. But apparently that gap meant he needed constant supervision, while I was expected to be self-sufficient. Middle school got worse. I was doing my own laundry, packing my own lunches, managing my own schedule. Brett couldn't be bothered to put his dirty clothes in the hamper. My mom would literally go into his room, pick up his scattered clothes, wash them, fold them, and put them back in his dresser. When I pointed out that maybe a 12-year-old could handle his own laundry, she said, "He's not as naturally organized as you are. He needs more support." Support! Right. That's what we were calling enabling now. High school was when the favoritism became impossible to ignore. I'd be up at 5 a.m. to help open the bakery before school, then go to classes, then work a part-time job after school, then come home and do homework until midnight. My weekends were split between the bakery and trying to maintain some semblance of a social life. Brett, he'd sleep until noon on weekends, roll downstairs around 1 p.m., eat whatever my mom had saved for him from the bakery, then disappear into his room to play video games or hang out with friends. If my parents needed help at the bakery, they'd call me. Never Brett. He was too busy or needed his rest or had plans with friends. The reward system was completely backwards. Brett would pass a math test after failing 3 straight, and my parents would take him out for dinner and buy him new headphones as a reward for his hard work. I'd maintain a 4.0 GPA while working 20 hours a week, and I'd get a good job if I was lucky. Usually, they'd just nod absently and go back to whatever bakery crisis they were managing that week. Senior year, I got accepted to the state university with a partial scholarship, a huge achievement given how much time I'd spent working, instead of focusing solely on academics and extracurriculars. My parents' reaction? That's nice, honey. Make sure you can still help at the bakery on weekends when you're home. Brett barely graduated high school with a 2.3 GPA. He'd skipped so many classes the school threatened to hold him back. My parents threw him a graduation party, invited everyone they knew, got him a car as a present. A car. For barely scraping by with the minimum requirements to graduate. I got nothing for my high school graduation. Well, not nothing. They gave me a card with $50 and told me to spend it wisely, since I'd need to learn to budget for college. The money thing was its own special kind of messed up. Brett never had a job growing up. Never mowed lawns, never bagged groceries, never did anything to earn his own money. Didn't need to. My parents funded everything. New phone every year, newest gaming console, clothes from the mall, money for going out with friends. Me? I started working at 14 and paid for all my own stuff from then on. School supplies, clothes, anything I wanted to do with friends, all on my dime. My parents would say it was teaching me responsibility and preparing me for the real world. Meanwhile, Brett was being prepared for what exactly? A lifetime of having everything handed to him while contributing nothing? The bakery work split was the most obvious example of favoritism. During school breaks and summers, I'd work 30-hour weeks at the bakery. Opening shifts, baking shifts, customer service, cleaning, inventory. I did it all. Brett would show up maybe twice a week for a couple hours, spend most of that time on his phone, and leave before any actual work needed doing. If I called him out on it, my parents would immediately rush to his defense. He's still young. He needs time to figure out what he wants. He's not as naturally suited to this kind of work as you are. He was 2 years younger than me, but somehow those 2 years meant he got a pass on everything while I was expected to function like a full-grown adult with no margin for error. The favoritism seeped into every aspect of family life. Whose opinions mattered during family decisions? Brett's. Whose schedule got priority? Brett's. Who got the benefit of the doubt when something went wrong? Brett. Always Brett. I remember one specific incident that really drove it home. I was 17, Brett was 15. We shared a car, an old sedan my parents had bought for both of you boys. In reality, Brett used it constantly, and I had to beg for access. One day, Brett took the car to hang out with friends and came back with a huge dent in the passenger side door. My parents asked what happened. Brett said he didn't know, that it must have happened in the parking lot while he was inside somewhere. Obvious lie, the damage was too severe to be from someone opening their door into ours. He'd clearly hit something or been hit by something significant. But my parents accepted his story without question, didn't even raise their voices, just said accidents happen and filed an insurance claim. 2 months later, I borrowed the car to drive to a school event. When I parked at home, I noticed the driver's side mirror was cracked, something that had happened while the car was parked in the school lot. I came inside and told my parents immediately, explained it must have happened while I was parked. My dad exploded. How was I so careless? Did I even look before I got out of the car? Did I have any idea how much it would cost to replace? He ranted for 20 minutes about responsibility and taking care of things, and how I was old enough to know better. Same parents, same situation, completely different responses based solely on which son was involved. That was my entire childhood in a microcosm. By high school, I'd learned to just keep my head down and focus on getting out. College became my singular goal, the escape hatch from a life I didn't want. I worked hard in school, took every AP class offered, joined clubs not because I cared about them, but because they'd look good on college applications. I worked weekends and summer at a local hardware store, saving every penny for college expenses. I applied to 6 schools and got into 4. The state university was my top choice, far enough away that I couldn't be guilted into coming home every weekend, close enough that I didn't need a plane ticket if I did visit. They offered a partial scholarship that, combined with federal aid and my savings, made it actually feasible. When the acceptance letter came, I felt like I'd won the lottery. This was it. My ticket out. I'd be the first person in my family to actually graduate from a 4-year university. My parents had both done community college for a semester before dropping out to work at the bakery full-time. This was my chance to be different, to build something that was actually mine. My parents chipped in some money for tuition, about 30% of what financial aid didn't cover. I paid the rest through a combination of my savings, a part-time job, and modest student loans. They acted like they were being incredibly generous, like they were making huge sacrifices to help me. In reality, they were contributing less than what they spent on Brett's car, his phone plans, his entertainment budget. But I didn't complain. I was just grateful to be getting out. Freshman year was like breathing fresh air for the first time. Nobody knew me as the responsible one or the bakery kid. I was just Kyle, a regular college student trying to figure out his major and make friends. I joined study groups, went to campus events, stayed up late having those dumb philosophical conversations that only happen when you're 18 and think you've got the world figured out. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus library. Quiet job, decent pay, let me study during slow periods. Between that and financial aid, I was covering my living expenses. It was tight, but manageable. I lived in the cheapest dorm, ate a lot of ramen, skipped the meal plan, and cooked for myself when possible. Meanwhile, Brett was spending his senior year of high school doing the bare minimum and living consequence-free. He'd taken to posting on social media constantly, pictures of new shoes, electronics, nights out with friends, all funded by my parents, of course. I'd come home for Thanksgiving and Christmas break, help out at the bakery for a few days, then head back to campus. The visits were tolerable because I knew they were temporary. I could handle a week of bakery work and family dynamics if it meant I got to leave again. But every visit, the pressure would build a little more. My parents would drop these comments. "It's so nice having you home. The bakery runs so much smoother when you're here. We really miss your help during the semester. Your brother just doesn't have your work ethic." Never direct statements, just gentle nudges. Planting seeds, building up to something I couldn't quite see yet, but could feel coming. Second year started strong. I declared my major, business administration with a focus on supply chain management. Practical, marketable, something that could lead to an actual career. I'd found a better paying job working for the university's facilities department. The work was more physical, helping set up for events, basic maintenance tasks, but it paid $3 more an hour than the library job. I was taking 5 classes, working 25 hours a week, and maintaining a 3.4 GPA. Not perfect, but solid. I'd found a rhythm. My apartment was a dump. I shared a two-bedroom with three other guys, sleeping in the converted living room with a curtain for privacy. But it was cheap and I was managing. I'd even started dating someone. Nothing serious, just a girl from my economics class who was smart and funny and didn't know anything about my family situation beyond the basic facts. It felt normal, like I was building a real life. Then came the phone call that should have been a warning. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was meal prepping for the week when my mom called. Unusual, she usually texted. When I answered, she sounded stressed. "How are your classes going?" she asked, in that tone that meant she wasn't really asking about classes. "Fine. Busy, but fine." "That's good. That's really good." Long pause. "The bakery's been struggling lately. Your dad and I are stretched really thin. We could really use some extra help on weekends if you're ever able to come home." Here we go. "Mom, I'm 2 hours away and I work weekends. I can't just drive home every Saturday." I know. I'm just saying. It would be nice. We miss you. The bakery misses you. The bakery missed me. Like it was a person instead of a failing business. We talked for a few more minutes before I made an excuse to get off the phone. After hanging up, I felt uneasy but pushed it aside. They were struggling. So what? The bakery had been struggling for years. They'd figure it out. 2 weeks later, similar call from my dad. Business was slow. They were thinking about adjusting hours. Really could use someone reliable helping out. "You were always so good at the customer service side. People loved you." I gave the same response. "Couldn't help. Too busy with school and work. Maybe I could come home for a weekend soon." After that call, I mentioned it to my roommate Jordan. "Parents are getting weird," I said. "Keeps calling about the bakery." Jordan looked up from his laptop. "Dude, they're softening you up. Classic manipulation tactic. My parents pulled the same thing before they ambushed me about changing majors." "What did you do?" "Told them to kick rocks." "It's your life, man. Don't let them guilt trip you into derailing it." Good advice. I should have listened to the warning signs. I went home for a weekend visit, expecting the usual routine. Home-cooked meal, maybe help out at the bakery on Saturday morning, then back to campus Sunday afternoon. Instead, my parents sat me down in the living room with this serious energy that made my stomach drop. Brett was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, not even pretending to pay attention. My mom started talking in that voice she uses when she's already decided something and doesn't want to hear arguments. The voice that means the decision is final, and you're just being told about it. "We're short-staffed at the bakery," she said. "Your father and I can't handle it alone anymore. It's time for you to step up and take your place in the family business." I waited for the punchline. There wasn't one. "We need you to drop out of college and come work at the bakery full-time." The room went silent except for Brett's phone making some notification sound. I just stared at them, trying to process what I just heard. My dad jumped in before I could respond. "Brett's not ready yet. He's still figuring out what he wants to do. But you're reliable, responsible. You've always been the one we could count on." I looked at Brett, who hadn't even looked up from his phone, still just scrolling, completely detached from the conversation that was about to blow up my entire future. "You want me to what?" I finally managed. "Drop out of college?" My mom nodded like this was the most reasonable request in the world. "We need someone we can trust at the bakery full-time. Hiring help isn't financially feasible right now. You could always go back to school later, once things are more stable." Later. Right. Because failing businesses always magically become stable if you just wait long enough. I turned to Brett. "What about him? Why can't he help?" Brett finally looked up, smirking. "I'm not really cut out for the bakery life. I've got bigger plans." Bigger plans. This kid who'd never held a job for more than 2 weeks had bigger plans. My dad defended him immediately. "Brett will help eventually, but he's still young. He hasn't figured out what he wants to do yet." "He's only 2 years younger than me," I pointed out. "Why does he get time to figure things out, but I have to give up everything?" My mom gave me this disappointed look, like I was being difficult for not immediately sacrificing my future. "You know how much this bakery means to our family. We've sacrificed so much to keep it running and provide for you." The Guilt Trip Playbook, page 1. "The bakery is struggling," my dad added. "We can't afford to hire anyone, and we're barely keeping up as it is. We need you here." Something clicked. If the bakery's struggling, maybe it's time to let it go. Sell it, or just close down. There are other ways to make a living. You'd think I'd suggested burning down an orphanage from their reactions. My mom actually gasped. "This bakery has been in our family for generations. Your grandparents built this from nothing. How can you even suggest that?" "Because it's killing you," I said. "You're both exhausted all the time. The business barely makes money, And now you're asking me to throw away my education for it. Maybe it's time to move on. My dad stood up, face red. This is your heritage, your responsibility. You don't just walk away from family. I'm not walking away from family. I'm refusing to destroy my future for a business that's already failing. That was apparently the wrong thing to say. My mom started crying. My dad started yelling about how I was ungrateful and selfish. Brett just sat there looking smug, like he was enjoying watching me get torn apart. The argument went on for 2 hours. They hit me with every guilt trip in the book. After everything we've done for you, family sticks together. We sacrificed so much for your education, and this is how you repay us? I held my ground, told them I wasn't dropping out, wasn't giving up my future, and if they needed help that badly, Brett could step up for once in his life. That's when my dad dropped the real bomb. If you won't help us, then you're on your own. No more tuition assistance, no more rent money, nothing. You want to be independent so badly? Fine. Let's see how you do without our support. My mom nodded, still crying. We can't keep supporting someone who won't support this family. Brett piped up from the couch. Guess he made his choice. I looked at the three of them. My parents who'd just threatened to cut me off if I wouldn't sacrifice my future, and my brother who'd contributed nothing but was somehow still the favorite. Fine, I said. If that's how it is, I'm done. I packed my stuff and left that night. Drove back to campus with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. They'd actually done it. Cut me off completely, all because I wouldn't throw away my education for a failing bakery that they refused to let die with dignity. The next few weeks were brutal. My parents had been covering about 30% of my tuition and all of my rent. Losing that meant I was suddenly scrambling to figure out how to stay in school. I maxed out my hours at my campus job, picked up a second job doing late-night shifts at a convenience store, started living off ramen and whatever food the campus food bank had available, moved out of my decent apartment into a room I rented from this guy who had a house near campus, $300 a month for a bedroom, barely big enough for a bed and a desk. Sleep became optional. I'd go to class, work my campus job, grab a few hours of sleep, then work the overnight shift at the store. Weekends were for catching up on assignments I was too exhausted to focus on during the week. My GPA started slipping. Hard to maintain good grades when you're running on 4 hours of sleep and can't afford textbooks for half your classes. I'd ask professors if I could borrow desk copies or share with classmates. Started using the library computers because I couldn't afford to fix my laptop when it died. The whole time, nothing from my parents. No calls, no texts, no, hey, how are you managing? Just silence. Brett, though. Brett was active on social media, posting about going out to eat, buying new clothes, getting whatever gadgets he wanted. My parents were clearly still funding his lifestyle while I was literally struggling to eat. 3 months in, I was having a breakdown in the campus library when my roommate found me. His name's Jordan, decent guy who worked in IT at the university. He took one look at me and said, "You look like death. What's going on?" I told him everything. The bakery, my parents' demands, getting cut off, working 2 jobs and still barely scraping by. Jordan just shook his head. That's messed up, man. Your family's toxic as hell. Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real. My family was toxic. This wasn't normal parent behavior. They'd literally weaponized money to try to force me into giving up my future. What are you going to do? Jordan asked. Keep going, I said. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of watching me fail. That became my mantra. Every time I wanted to quit, every time the exhaustion felt unbearable, I reminded myself that going back to them would prove they'd been right, that I couldn't make it without them. I wasn't giving them that. Around month 4, I started hearing things through distant relatives. My aunt mentioned in a casual Facebook comment that the bakery was really struggling. A cousin posted about how my parents were stressed about finances. Then I heard from my old friend who still lived in my hometown. He'd stopped by the bakery and said it looked rough. Equipment breaking down, inventory low, customers complaining about reduced hours. I felt bad for about 5 seconds, then remembered they'd chosen this. They could have hired help. They could have downsized. They could have made literally any choice except demanding I sacrifice my education. Instead, they'd gambled that cutting me off would force me to come crawling back. They'd lost that bet. 6 months after the blow-up, my aunt called me. She was always the reasonable one in the family, so I actually answered. Kyle, I need to tell you something, she said. Your parents won't like that I'm calling, but you deserve to know what's really going on. Turned out the bakery situation was way worse than I thought. They weren't just struggling. They were months behind on rent for the shop space. Equipment was breaking down constantly, and they'd lost several of their regular suppliers for not paying invoices on time. But here's the real kicker. They'd taken out a massive loan 6 months before the blowup, not to save the bakery, to fund Brett's big opportunity. Brett had convinced them he had this brilliant business idea, some vague thing about starting a social media marketing agency for local businesses. He had a whole pitch about how it would make money fast, help save the bakery, make the family wealthy. My parents bought it completely. They took out a $40,000 loan using the bakery as collateral, gave Brett the money to get started. From what my aunt had pieced together, Brett had spent about $10,000 on a fancy computer setup, $5,000 on a used car, and the rest on basically nothing. The business never materialized. He'd made a few social media accounts, posted some generic content for maybe 2 weeks, then just stopped. The loan payments were crushing my parents. They couldn't keep up with both the loan and the bakery expenses. That's why they'd needed me to come back and work for free, to cover the gap Brett had created. They didn't want to tell you, my aunt said. They were embarrassed that Brett's plan failed, and they needed you to save them from it, without knowing the real reason. I sat there processing this. My parents had cut me off, threatened my future, all to cover for my brother's failed vanity project. They'd bet $40,000 on Brett's promises, instead of investing in actual help for the bakery or supporting my education. And now they were paying the price. There's more, my aunt said. They put up part of the house as collateral for the loan. If they default, they could lose the bakery and the house. The full picture was clear now. My parents had made a catastrophically stupid decision based on favoritism and pride. Instead of admitting Brett wasn't ready and investing in actual solutions, they'd gambled everything on his empty promises. Now they were facing bankruptcy and hadn't even had the decency to tell me the truth. Have they asked you to come back? My aunt asked. No. They will, she said. Things are getting desperate. She was right. A week later, my mom called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. She sounded tired, on the verge of tears. For a second, I thought maybe she was calling to apologize, to acknowledge how badly they'd screwed up. No such luck. We need you to come back, she said immediately. The bakery is in trouble. We need your help. I stayed quiet, letting her talk. She went on about how hard things were, how they couldn't manage alone, how they'd made some mistakes but were trying to fix them. Then, Brett's struggling. He's not handling things well. We're doing everything we can, but we can't do this without you. Even now, even after everything, it was about Brett's feelings. Not about me, not about the damage they'd done. Just about Brett struggling to face consequences for once in his life. Why would I help? I asked, keeping my voice level. You cut me off, told me I wasn't part of the family anymore. Now you want me to come back and fix your mess? She started crying. We didn't mean it like that. You know we've always cared about you. We just needed you to understand how serious things were. I understand perfectly, I said. You took out a $40,000 loan for Brett's fake business, then tried to make me drop out of college to cover for his failure. That's pretty clear. Silence. Then, how did you? Doesn't matter how I know. What matters is you lied to me. You tried to manipulate me into destroying my future to save Brett from his own stupidity. My dad got on the phone. He was angry. You're being selfish. This family raised you, gave you everything, and now you're turning your back on us when we need you most. Something snapped. You didn't need me when you decided to mortgage the bakery for Brett's fantasy. You didn't need me when you cut off my tuition. You didn't need me when you canceled my rent payments. You only need me now because you're out of options and Brett can't fix what he broke. My dad's voice got louder. You have no idea what we've sacrificed. Sacrificed? You made a choice. You chose to risk everything on Brett's empty promises. You chose him over me. You chose wrong. That's not my problem to fix. I hung up. The call left me shaking, but it also crystallized everything. They would never change. Brett would never be held accountable, and I would never be valued as anything more than a backup plan for when their golden child inevitably failed. I needed to cut them out completely. I blocked their numbers, blocked them on all social media, told my aunt to stop passing messages, changed my number again, and made sure only trusted friends had it. A few days later, Brett sent me an email. Long rant about how I was abandoning the family, how he was trying his best to make things right, how if I'd just helped at the bakery instead of being selfish, everything would have worked out. The mental gymnastics were impressive. Somehow his failure was my fault because I wasn't there to clean up after him. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Brett would never admit he'd screwed up. My parents would never admit they'd chosen wrong. And I was done wasting energy on people who saw me as a tool instead of a person. The relatives started circling. cousins, aunts, uncles, all with messages about how I should do the right thing and help my family in their time of need. I blocked them all. Jordan helped me set up email filters to automatically delete anything from my family. We went through my social media and locked down every privacy setting. He even helped me check for any shared accounts or subscriptions that might give them ways to track me. Scorched earth, he said approvingly. Good. They don't deserve half measures. The semester ended. Despite everything, the 2 jobs, the financial stress, the family drama, I'd passed all my classes. Barely, but I'd passed. My GPA had taken a hit, but I was still in school. That felt like a win. Summer was more of the same. Worked full-time at both jobs, saved every penny I could, started planning for next year, applied for every scholarship and grant available, even got approved for some additional student loans to replace what my parents had been contributing. It wasn't ideal, but it was mine, built on my own work, not their conditional support. I heard through the grapevine that the bakery closed. My parents couldn't keep up with the loan payments and lost the shop. They managed to keep the house by selling off equipment and negotiating with the bank. But the family business that was supposed to be our legacy was gone. Part of me felt bad. Despite everything, that bakery had been a part of my childhood. It was where my grandparents had built something from nothing, where my parents had poured decades of their lives. But another part of me recognized that they'd killed it themselves. Not through lack of effort or bad luck, but through terrible decision-making and favoritism. They'd bet everything on Brett instead of making smart business choices, and they'd lost. That wasn't my responsibility to fix. A few weeks ago, I got a message from Brett. He'd somehow found my new number, probably through a mutual friend who didn't know better. Hey man, I know things got bad. I'm sorry about how everything went down. I've been trying to get a real job and help mom and dad out. It's tough. They really need you though. Can we talk? The apology was hollow. How everything went down. Like it was some accident, some unavoidable tragedy, instead of the direct result of his failures and our parents' choices. I didn't respond. Blocked the number. 3 days later, another message from a different number. It's Brett. Please don't block me. I'm trying to make things right. Can you just hear me out? I screenshotted the message and sent it to Jordan with the caption, "They're persistent." His response, "Want me to handle it?" "No, I got it." I sent Brett one final message. "You're not trying to make things right. You're trying to make me fix your mistakes. I'm done being your backup plan. Don't contact me again." Then I blocked that number too. That night, I was hanging out with Jordan and some other friends from school. Someone asked how my family was doing, not knowing the whole situation. "Don't have one," I said simply. Jordan jumped in before anyone could ask follow-up questions, steering the conversation elsewhere. Later, he pulled me aside. "You doing okay with all this?" "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm actually living my life instead of managing theirs. That's good, man. You deserve that. The thing is, cutting off your family is supposed to be this devastating, tragic thing. At least that's what everyone says. Like you're supposed to feel empty or lost without them. I don't. I feel free. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.